We need an American competitiveness agenda. We need government that enables business in addition to regulating it. We need government that recognizes they don't create jobs unless they spend our money, but importantly, they can create an environment where jobs can be created. We need government that pulls together rather than pulls apart, reveling in their discordant pluralism. We need to recognize it's important to train for the economic Olympics now and not just brag about how we won it 20 years ago. And we need to start now. 20 years ago, there were only about 1 billion people in the global economy. Today, there are about 4 billion active participants in the global economy, with the addition of China, India, CIS states, Russia, and numerous other countries who have recognized that prosperity for their citizens comes from a robust private sector. This is a good phenomenon for the world, as we now have at least 4 billion people thinking about how to make things better, how to improve productivity, and how to create a better life for their families and descendants. Standard of living comes from productivity, the ability to do more every year with less input of material and labor, the ability to innovate and invent, the ability for new ideas to flourish, and the ability to have free flow of ideas, of people, of goods, and of money. Economics is not a zero-sum game. Both sides benefit in an economic transaction. This is more easily understood on a micro basis when you go to the store and buy something. You give the store money, they give you the goods purchased, and both of you and the store are happy. This point seems to get lost on a macro basis with the general feeling that it's unfair. Sometimes it probably is. Most of the time, it's not. It's generally easier to see the disruption because it's focused, while the benefit, which is bigger, is diffused. Trading nations from the Phoenicians to the Hanseatic League to the Dutch, the British, the US have all done well. Despite the evidence, it seems that every century we get ready to have the same argument again rather than just figuring out how to compete better. As a country, we need to recognize that, one, we are in a different global economy than we were 20 years ago. Two, that the global economy will move forward with us or without us. Three, that in all our political arguments, there is truth on both sides, and we need to pull together towards a common objective as a team. And four, that's why we need an American competitiveness agenda. My guess is there are a lot of ideas out there, but there's 6 areas that I'd like to see us focus on immediately. We know what needs to be done. It's just a matter of doing it. The first, of course, is debt reduction. People are tired of hearing about it, but it is real. And if we just keep doing it in trillion-dollar bites, we will get to see the same political circus every year for the next 7 or 8 years. Now, I never thought I'd be in a position where I could say $1 trillion wasn't enough, but that's where we are. When dealing with big numbers, it sometimes helps to put it on a micro scale, so think of it this way. If you were a family acting like our government, you would be making $21,000 a year and spending $35,000 a year. How long can that continue? In the argument of more taxes versus less spending, it is both, and Simpson-Bowles is a good place to start, including the simpler tax system advocated in the proposal. Our current entitlements programs will crush us as the baby boomer generation retires. We are on a path to be spending $1 trillion a year in interest in 10 years. Now, we generally understand millions and billions, so trillions just seems like the next number. So to help put $1 trillion in perspective, if you had spent $1 million a day since Jesus Christ was born about 2011 years ago, you would still not have spent $1 trillion. And that will be our annual interest bill. This is not how a great nation behaves. And something will happen here, and it'll be one of 2 ways. The first is to do it thoughtfully and proactively, the way a great nation should. The second is to wait until the bond market forces us to do it, like Greece did. And for those who think that this is just a Wall Street problem, look at it this way. When 10-year bonds go to 7%, and as a result, home mortgages are 10%, car loans are 13%, that's a Main Street problem. The faster we act, the less painful it will be for everyone. Income tax reform has to be an essential part of resolving our debt crisis. We have a grossly inefficient and globally uncompetitive system today. The rates that exist today yield about $2.3 trillion in income taxes. But then we give back about $1.2 trillion in the euphemistically named tax expenditures. Tax expenditures are just another form of spending, but it's done through the tax code. In the most recent year, there were 169 of these special credits and deductions. The top rate differs if you are an individual or an incorporated company, and if you earn your income as wages or capital gains. Low-income individuals are eligible for the Earned Income Tax Credit and Child Care Credit. Some have estimated that the refund is an average of $1,000, but that the system for receiving it is so complicated that recipients on average pay $100 to a tax preparer to collect the $1,000. The corporate system is globally uncompetitive. We have one of the highest rates in the world, but then we have various credits and deductions resulting in a much lower cash tax rate. We are also the only major economy without a territorial system for taxes on foreign earnings. This policy encourages companies with foreign earnings to keep that cash out overseas, outside the U.S., rather than repatriating. Additionally, because dividends and stock repurchases legally have to be done through U.S.-based accounts, many companies find themselves in a situation where they have much, if not all of their debt, including underfunded pension plans in the U.S., and most of their cash outside the U.S., an economically silly policy. If we were actually trying to design an uncompetitive, inefficient system on every dimension, and for every category of taxpayer, we could not have done this good a job. So what to do? It starts with some fundamentals of what we want the income tax system to do. First, we need to decide what we want government to do and how much of it. That should generate some intense political dialogue. We all know government is not the most efficient user of funds, but at the same time, there are things we need that only government can do. Second, based on current discussions, we need to find the best way to extract 20 to 21% of GDP in taxes in the least intrusive and least noxious way possible. It needs to be the mosquito extracting blood from the host, irritating but survivable, and not the vampire killing the host in the process. Now, given the essence of political compromise, we will probably end up with a vampire mosquito, as long as the host can still prosper. Third, we should construct the system that creates the least market distortion possible, and almost all deductions and credits create distortions of some kind. Fourth, in the process, it needs to be recognized by politicians that government is not just a regulator of business. Government is also an enabler of business. Regulation is important to set minimum standards, and enabling is important to foster that dynamism that's so essential to a growing economy that creates those jobs that we all want. Tax policy can be an enabler. The Fiscal Commission process for arriving at a recommendation was messy and arduous, largely because it's a very messy and complicated system. All of us were astounded by the extent of tax expenditures and the complexity of, well, everything, just everything. The more we tried to work with the existing system, the more it became clear we would be better off to just start with a clean sheet of paper to design a simpler, more fair, less economically intrusive system. That's how we got to the zero plan in the Simpson-Bowles proposal. The zero plan is more progressive than our current system. It eliminates the complexity and market distortions caused by the 169 separate deductions most recently used and preserves those for the very poor. It has the top rate about the same for individuals, companies, and capital gains, eliminating the unproductive use of time spent on how to organize to avoid taxes. Addressing both tax reform and entitlement spending will be essential to resolving our increasing debt crisis. The second major area is energy policy. In the debate of energy generation versus energy efficiency, the answer is to do both. There is a huge opportunity for efficiency. We've estimated that just aggressively using existing Honeywell products could save the U.S. 20 to 25% of its energy bill. Imagine the impact when everybody else's stuff is included also. But that takes time and changes to our system of incentives and behaviors. In the meantime, we need more oil, gas, and renewables now. A thoughtful energy policy comprising both generation and efficiency will have two benefits. The first, it will provide the low-cost power needed to sustain good GDP growth. The second is that with gasoline at $4 a gallon now and consumers fearful it will go to $8, we would instead have $2 gasoline. That would immediately put money into consumers' pockets that they can spend to propel our economy, rather than sending that cash out of the country like we do today. The third is free trade and developing a more thoughtful and nuanced relationship with China. Open trade relationships benefit both countries. The rest of the world is moving this way, and we're not. While there are legitimate concerns about labor and environmental laws, helping those disrupted by trade, and adherence to agreements, this is again a case where we need to work together to achieve the best balance of both. The same is true of our China relationship. It's not as simple as, is China good or is China bad? I've been asked before if we should view China as a partner, as a competitor, as a customer, or as a supplier. The answer, of course, is yes. It's all of those. With 4 times the people and a much lower standard of living, as long as they continue to make the right decisions and evolve, as they have over the last 20 to 30 years, they can continue to grow well for a long time. If U.S. real GDP grows at 3% annually and China's at 7% annually, China will be the biggest economy in the world in 30 years and still have a lower standard of living, meaning a lot more opportunity to grow. I liken it to how the United Kingdom probably viewed the U.S. 100 to 150 years ago. Brash, big, dynamic, intellectual property concerns, and a future force to be reckoned with if we made the right decisions, which we did. A prosperous, peaceful China is a good thing for the U.S., for China, and for the rest of the world. The fourth is a focus on math and science education. We need more engineers, not more lawyers. We need that Sputnik moment that mobilizes our kids to want to be engineers. Most innovation and productivity comes from engineers and technology. In 2007, the U.S. graduated about 450,000 U.S. citizens as engineers. China graduated about 950,000. And that's with only about 1/3 as many college-age eligible kids going on to college on a percentage basis. That means when it equalizes, China will graduate about 3 million engineers a year to our 500,000. We need more engineers, and we need more open immigration for non-U.S. citizen engineers who want to be here. As another example of how both sides are right and need to work together, there are over 100 federally funded STEM programs, STEM meaning science, technology, engineering, and math, with arguments that more money is needed. However, none of those 100 programs are coordinated, and none are even measured to see if we're getting the results that we're paying for. Senator Tom Coburn has some great data in this regard, and working together, we could have a much better solution. The fifth is infrastructure development. Senator John Kerry has some great data showing developing regions spend 9% of GDP on infrastructure, Europe 5%, and the U.S. 2%. We need better roads, bridges, and ports. We also need to upgrade our air traffic management system from its current 1950s baseline, and we need to advance broadband. While we do have to cut overall spending drastically, there is such a thing as good spending. We shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The sixth is tort reform. It sounds like an old refrain, but it is true. We have let the pendulum swing too far in an attempt to root out society's inequities, to the point where our tort system is a mystery to the rest of the world. As other countries look to invest in the U.S., they frequently ask if they can be sued and lose for the things that they read about. It's a sad commentary when I have to say, yes, it's true. It is possible. And it's just one of the downsides to participating in the world's biggest market. This is another area where working together we can achieve a better balance, providing fairness for people who have suffered inequities, while also providing fairness for the companies that invest and provide jobs. We have an important choice to make in the next few years. Do we still have that ability to compete? Or have we become so enamored of our entitlements that we no longer care if we pass on a brighter future to our kids and grandkids? Do we still have that will, that ability to train hard? Or do we want to sit on the couch and watch what others, as others do what we could have done? Life and business are always about trying to do two seemingly competing things at the same time. Do you want a good work life, or do you want a good home life? Do you want good short-term results, or do you want good long-term results? Do you want people empowered, or do you want good controls so that nothing bad happens? In every case, you want both. The same principle holds for these 6 areas, and we need our government to accomplish both. That happens when they work together to accomplish the objective of American competitiveness. The choice is simple and stark. Are we so focused on our entitlements that we've forgotten what made us great? Hard work, math and science education, technical skills, a dynamic economy, a sense of purpose, relying on ourselves and not blaming others, taking personal ownership of our future, and being able to individually act in our self-interest while not forgetting our collective purpose. Some people in the world, and some countries even, believe that our time is past, that a once great economic and military power has taken the first steps on the path to decline, that we cannot resolve our internal differences to make the difficult choices needed as a society, that having achieved greatness, we've forgotten what got us here and can no longer act. One thing I do know is that government is unlikely to act unless they truly feel the push from our citizens, from the voters. It's important for all of us to let our politicians know that we want to compete, that we still know how, and that we just need the tools to do it. By addressing debt and taxes, energy policy, math and science education, infrastructure, free trade, and tort reform, we can have the tools that we need to create a dynamic, fair economic environment where our country and our people can continue winning. It's a question of, do we still have the political will to do the hard things required in life? We can do it. We need the government to work together and enable it. We just need the tools. Thanks.